Hey Stampers, thanks for joining me. Today I wanted to show you how I colored the Cardinal on a couple of my Christmas cards that I've had on my blog. I've had some questions about it, and so I'm just going to attempt to show you what I did. Now this Cardinal is from the Toile Christmas stamp set, and I have stamped him with Memento Tuxedo Black ink. It is a water-based ink, and I am coloring with the Stampin Blends markers, which are an alcohol base. So anytime you color with the alcohol base, you need to use the water base black ink pad to stamp with. That way you don't get the bleeding that you would otherwise. So, and every time I do this, color this Cardinal in, I do get a little bit different results. That's just the way it works for me. But I'm going to be using Calypso Coral Light, Poppy Parade Light, Poppy Parade Dark, and then I have the old Stampin Blends for Cherry Cobbler, and I have the light, the medium, and the dark. So I'm gonna just kind of play around, and I may use all three, I'm not really sure, because I don't remember what I did for that one. And then for the beak, I used Mango Melody, the light and the dark. So if you have the new Cherry Cobbler pens, you only would have the light and the dark. They used to do a medium. So I kind of think I'm going to be using medium and dark. This one I believe is a little closer to the Poppy Parade if I remember right, but we're going to check it. So I have stamped the Cardinal with the Memento black ink onto a piece of Whisper White. And I'm going to start with the Calypso Coral Light, and I'm just going to color in this chest and upper wing area, kind of like that. And that's about all I will be using that color for. Now I'm going to come in with the Poppy Parade, the light one, and I'm going to start at the outer edges out here on the belly, and just what I call flick the color up into the former. And you do kind of have to be careful that you don't get out of the lines, but if you do, it's not the end of the world. You are going to be cutting, or I will be cutting this out with a die later. So just flick, 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 and as you're flicking, it's darker here and gets lighter here. So flicking is great for blending because I'm starting out dark, and as we get nearer the center, it gets a little lighter. I am going over that whole area where I did the Calypso Coral, but I will not continue to go completely over it with the darker colors. So as you can see on this card, that does stay quite a bit lighter. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and fill in with the light Poppy Parade all of the areas that should be red, and then we're going to start layering on top of that. And most of the time when I use these Stampin' Blends, I find that I'm using the wide end. They do have a little end. If his legs needed coloring, I would definitely use a little end for that, but they don't. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to the Poppy Parade Dark, and I'm going to do the belly again, doing my flicking up from the bottom of the chest, or the edge, and into that lighter area. But this time I'm not going all the way up. I'm not going to fill in that entire area. So I'm going to flick down now from the neck, and like that. And I'm just building color on color, but I'm not always going over all of the previous areas. Okay, let's go back now with the light Poppy Parade, and I've got some lines here that I don't want. So I am going to just blend now from the edges of the darker Poppy Parade. I'm going to just kind of fill in and blend those edges. See what that just did? You don't see those lines like you did before. Now let's try the light Cherry Cobbler and just see if that's gonna do anything. Yeah, I guess it works. But I think we'll end up using both of the other ones too. So now I need to kind of, let's see. I always turn the paper so I can flick away from me. It seems like I have better control that way. Every once in a while I flick towards me, but I don't like the way it feels. So I'm flicking, but when I want to come up and blend, I need to be pulling up into that area. Okay. Okay. Now let's go to the Cherry Cobbler medium, and we just want to keep deepening the shadows. I took a class from a friend who was teaching how to use Stampin Blends. Well, they were a different brand before Stampin Up started selling them, but she taught me how to flick. And that changed my coloring skills in a huge way. I feel like I'm a better colorer now. I use it with colored pencils and the Stampin Blends. Okay, now I'm getting some lines in here. So once again, I'm going to go back to the Poppy Parade light because I don't want this area to get much darker, but I need to blend in those lines. So see how it's staying a little bit brighter, a little bit more of an orange look to it, but I almost feel like I have too much up here. So I am going to take in, I'm gonna go in with a little bit more of the Poppy Parade dark and just darken that area up just a little so that the chest is what's really having the highlight. See how that worked? I'm gonna go in with the Cherry Cobbler light and do a little bit of flicking there as well. And just blend. Okay. And now finally, I think I will try some of the Cherry Cobbler, the dark. And I have to be really careful with this one. Let's do it on the tail first and see. Yeah, that's really dark. So I'm going to go easy with that one because it would be really easy to overdo. And a little bit harder to blend in, perhaps. Okay, I am going to go just a little up here on his head. Okay. So when you are using blenders, it is a process of continuing to blend. You bring back the light and go smooth out those edges. And when you do that, it does darken it a little. I think I'm going to go in here over the black area because I've gotten it in some and it shows, and now I just got his eye red. That's not what I wanted to do. Well, okay, so now let's go to the Mango Melody, the light and the dark. The entire beak is going to be with the light. And then I'm going to bring in some of the dark just at the base of his beak where it would be perhaps not so light. And you can also do a technique with a blender that's just dots. Instead of flicking, you can just kind of do some dots to fill in. So I'm going to do a few of those dots right up here. Won't be a big difference, but it adds just a little bit more of a deeper color. Now, we do have a color lifter pen. I don't know how well it's going to work on that red around in his eye, but I'm going to try it. And it takes just a minute for it to work sometimes, but I think it is pulling some of that red out of there. So while it doesn't work perfectly, as in, let's see, where I've gotten out of the lines a little bit, I can try and erase some of that. Red is probably one of the hardest colors to erase, but it is actually doing a fairly decent job. I'm impressed. And again, I'm going to be using a framelit or a die on this. So yeah, that did kind of get some of that away. It does leave a little bit of a wet residue to it, and it will dry, so that will go away. But yeah, I got all of the red out of his eye. Look at that. So that is how I colored this. And of course, every time you do it, you get a little bit different results. And I could keep working at it. You always go through. It's normal. When you use the blender pens, you are going to leak through. So make sure you have a placemat down to protect your table. Okay. It doesn't really go through onto the paper a whole lot, but you certainly wouldn't want to do this on a nice dining room table or something and then end up with some ink where you didn't want it. I'm gonna see if I can erase some of this. Hey, that's working pretty good. Okay, so I hope you learned a little bit about how to use your blends and how to color the Cardinal, and practice. Practice is what makes perfect. Give that flicking a try and just see what you think. Try it with your colored pencils. I think you're gonna find that you have a really good success with that. So thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next time.